Hi, church. I wanted to share with you a little bit about how Jeremiah endured during incredible difficulty and suffering. God's sovereignty is often problematic for us. If God is in control of the circumstances of our lives, then he is responsible for the suffering and difficulty that we experience. Many believers who have trusted in God their entire lives will reject him when calamity strikes because they can't connect God's goodness and his sovereignty. How can we believe in a God who has the power to stop suffering but doesn't? That's a big question. And ultimately, it comes down to a matter of faith. Jeremiah was a man who exhibited faith in God during a time of incredible suffering that he knew was inflicted on him by God himself. In Lamentations 3, God is said to inflict all sorts of pain and suffering on Jeremiah, including using him as a human target for arrows, breaking his bones, causing his flesh to grow old, making his way dark and his path crooked. In verse 38, Jeremiah states outright, "Is it not from the mouth of the Most High that both calamities and good things come?" Jeremiah rightly identifies God as the source of both the difficulty and the blessing that the nation of Israel and Jeremiah himself experienced. Many of the prophets, such as Ezekiel, Isaiah, Hosea, and others, foretold about the calamity that would befall the Israelites if they disobeyed God. The terrors that Jeremiah writes about in Lamentations are the result of the Israelites' idolatry against God. So, does that mean that God brings on difficulty and struggle in response to our sin, just like he did with the Israelites? Jesus says in John 9 that the struggles of life are not the result of sin, but they are used by God for his glory. Sometimes it's very difficult to see how God might be using suffering for his glory, but that's where faith comes in. Jeremiah didn't commit idolatry with the rest of the people, but he still lived through the siege, the capture, and the exiles of the Israelites. It would have made sense for him to lose faith because he was being unjustly afflicted by God. But Jeremiah didn't turn his back on God because he knew that God was still good and still sovereign. He chose to glorify God even though God allowed him to suffer along with the rest of the people. Jeremiah writes a powerful response to the pain that he was experiencing. "Yet I call this to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. For his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore, I will wait for him." Whether you believe that suffering is from our sovereign God or that he simply allows it, we must have faith like Jeremiah, that God is good and that everything has a purpose. While you're in the middle of a difficult time, remember to look for those small mercies that God supplies to us new every morning. Thanks for listening.